Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something. But we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here.
Did you know that white South African farmers are being brutally attacked and robbed of their land, and the mainstream media won't even tell you about it? But guess who will? President Donald J. Trump. He just did what no other world leader has had the courage to do. He's offering asylum to these persecuted farmers, giving them a chance at life and freedom in the United States. So why does this matter? Because this is about more than just South Africa. It's about standing up against to be heard. Have your say in the comments.
These are the first group of white South Africans who've been fast-tracked into refugee status. The Trump administration made a big thing about cracking down on immigration and suspending the refugee resettlement program. So questions are being asked on why has such an exception been made for this group of people?
White farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa.
Billionaire Elon Musk grew up in apartheid South Africa. He's one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, and he claims that there is a genocide of white people happening. South Africa's foreign minister says that there has been no land confiscation, and Donald Trump's claims that murders are happening in large numbers is not backed by any police data.
From South Africa to Dulles International Airport was the first group of what we have been told is Afrikaner refugees arriving here at Dulles today. Now, administration officials say that these Afrikaners are the victims of race-based persecution, and federal officials today from the State Department and Homeland Security pledged at the airport as they arrived after a 12-hour flight. The U.S. government would help them with housing, furniture, food, everything they needed to relocate here to the United States.
And Fitz, there is some controversy over this refugee flight today. So what are critics of the flight saying at this point?
Well, while the president signed this executive order for the Afrikaners on February 7th, you might remember before that, the very first day of this administration, the president effectively shut down the U.S. refugee program. So a lot of these refugee advocates from around the world are saying, look, if you're going to make an exception for these Afrikaners, why aren't you letting refugees in from around at other hot spots throughout the world? And, incidentally, Angie, it's not uncommon for a foreign government to deny that people who are leaving their country are refugees. However, the South African president vehemently denied that these people are refugees. In fact, he says they do not meet the standard of being a refugee. Instead, in his view, he says they are just not going along with the changes in the country. However, you talk to Afrikaners and they will say they have been the subject of home invasions, of violence. People have had their farmland taken away. So there is a big difference here of opinion as to, whether or not these people are or not refugees.
All of these folks who have just come in today have been carefully vetted pursuant to our refugee standards, and whether or not the broader refugee programs for other people around the world will be lifted is still an ongoing consideration. The South African government has not done what we feel is appropriate to guarantee the rights of these citizens to live in peace with their fellow South Africans, which is why under our domestic law they were given refugee status.
No, it's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. Why would they be getting discriminated against? Probably because they spent generations instituting legalized forms of racial segregation and discrimination called apartheid, aka Stephen Miller's wet dream. See, while the rest of the world after World War II saw that maybe racial discrimination not such a hot idea and favored more policies of integration and away from colonization.
It's crazy. Like, I don't understand what their school of thought is. Like, how can you just have hate in your heart for no reason? Like, I don't get it. Like, you want everyone to go back. It's not as simple as just go back to your country. We're born here. I'm born here. Like, listen to my accent. I was born around the corner, 10 minutes down the road. So where do you want me to go back to? This is home. Whips Cross. I live on St. James Street. So where do you want me to go back to? I don't get it. And if you look down your lineage, their grandparents probably came from, I don't know, maybe Germany or Scotland or Ireland or whatever. Maybe because they might be white or whatever, but it doesn't mean that you have a divine right to be here. And maybe the reason why some of our parents are here is because there's better opportunities here. Our countries were invaded years ago. Like, it's not a simple solution as just everyone go back. So we need to educate them.
My name's Kylie, and here are the top 5 arguments that white people use to claim they're not racist. Number 1, coming in hot, we have, I don't see color. AKA, I didn't mean anything racist, and you're actually the racist one for even talking about race. Number 2, we have, I'm not racist, my boyfriend/girlfriend is insert minority here, thinking that dating a person of a specific minority group therefore excuses them from being racist. Number 4, we have, I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, or purple, as if that absolves them from being racist by simply declaring they're not, then they're not. And number 5, oh, this one's tough. We have, I have black friends, therefore I can't be racist, not only to black people, but to any minority group. As you can see, the main thing in common between each of these phrases is a refusal to take responsibility for the racism and actually finding a way to make themselves seem more relatable by including the fact that they do hang out or associate with people of color. Yes, you can be racist even if you interact with people of color on a day-to-day basis or if you are dating a person.
How racist this new administration truly is. This is some of the most racist shit I've ever heard of. In 1913, South Africa had white supremacists running the country, and they created apartheid, which created segregation and discrimination laws against black South Africans. It was whites only South African businesses, whites only South African movie theaters, whites only South African swimming pools. South Africa was on that racist shit just like America treated black folks. So in 1913, white South Africans took over South Africa with force. White South Africans stole land owned by black South Africans. Fast forward to 2025. 3 of Trump's biggest supporters are 3 of the most richest men on the planet. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and David Sachs are 3 billionaires that fully support Trump. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and David Sachs are all white South Africans who were born in South Africa, white supremacy, and apartheid. Elon Musk is a white South African white supremacist. South Africa now has a black president. This South African president wants equality in South Africa. He wants the racism to stop, and he wants everyone to be treated equally. Trump and Elon Musk heard about this black South African president wanting equality. Trump immediately stopped all funding to South Africa. There are only 7% of white people in South Africa, but those white people own 70% of the land in South Africa because they stole most of that land from black South Africans. The new black South African president put a new law in place to right the wrongs that were done to black South Africans that had land stolen from them. Just like when European settlers stole America from the natives. Because the South African president wants to give back land that white South Africans stole from black South Africans, that's why Trump and his administration are saying white South Africans are being persecuted and done wrong. But white South Africans are not under persecution.
I mean, the facts are there is no systematic prosecution of white Afrikaner farmers. For the Trump administration to take the view that there's somehow systematic persecution, it's actually problematic and troublesome and damning on the way the Trump administration is receiving its information.
How are they being prosecuted when they the ones who stole the land from black South Africans? Black South Africans are the ones who originally owned that land. What's so wrong with doing right and giving black South Africans their land back? But see, this is the thing. South Africa is not even seizing land like Donald Trump is saying they are. It's a lawful process that's handled in the courts of South Africa. If someone stole land from you and your family, wouldn't you want it back? I did my research and I found out how
The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other. Before we figured out there were other people to kill, we just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote-unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed. But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war, right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Oh, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like, how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight, because we gotta maintain our way of life, because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I got to charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right? So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people. But they got tricked by rich white men telling them that their enemies were black and brown. Fast forward to the 1930s. And you have white labor leaders. They're not even the elite, right? The labor leaders are not the elite, but they're the elite within the labor movement. And even they had fallen for it at this point. So they didn't want to integrate their unions. And they would say things like, well, we can't have black people and Mexicans and Chinese folks in our unions, because if we do that, it's going to reduce the professionalism of our craft. We have to maintain the integrity of our profession. No, fool, you need more people in the damn union is what you need. And if you don't let those folks in, guess what happens when you go out on strike? Who is the boss going to use to replace you? They're going to replace you with the very same black and brown folks that you didn't want to work next to, right? And so at the end of and then you're going to blame them for taking your job rather than the white rich dude for giving it to them, right? Divide and conquer. Telling not rich white folks that their enemies are black and brown. And now we fast forward to the president. We got the president of the United States becoming president on the basis of that same rhetoric. Telling not rich white folks that the reason they don't have a job is because Mexicans took them.
You want to know what racism looks like in the UK? It's not always someone yelling racial slurs in the street. It's quieter, more polite, but more dangerous. I'll give you a few examples of how deep it really goes. The Windrush scandal. Black British citizens legally here 4 decades, detained, denied healthcare and deported by our government, their government. It wasn't a mistake, it was policy. Stop and search. Black people are 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched in England and Wales. It's not about crime, it's about treating them like they're a threat. School exclusion. Global majority children are more likely to be punished harshly, excluded, and treated like a problem and not given support for additional need, becoming a pipeline from school to prison. Immigration policy. The hostile environment policy was designed to make life unbearable for immigrants, especially those from global majority backgrounds. Racial control designed as law. Maternal health care. Black women are still 4 times more likely to die during childbirth. It's not biology, it's systemic neglect. That's just a few examples of embedded racism in the UK, often denied and protected by silence. So when I'm saying white people need to be accountable, it's not about blame, it's about being responsible. Because benefiting from a system that causes harm and not saying anything is being complicit, and staying silent just keeps it standing. So if you're ready to learn more and unlearn your social conditioning, hit the link in my bio. I'm the anti-racist mum and I teach white people how to do better.
You think white people hate black people?
Yes.
Or they just don't understand us?
Hate us. They understand us. Nigga, they made us. They educate us. What you mean they don't understand us? They educate us. 95% of school teachers are white in America. What you mean they don't understand us? Most of them are our probation officers. Most of them are our judges. What you mean they don't understand us? They're reading our files. They know our history. They know our history better than we know it.
But they don't understand. They don't understand the struggle, though. That's what I mean. They
do understand the struggle. They created it for us to struggle. They know what the struggle does to us. Believe me. We don't know. That's why we talk about. That's why we try to embrace the struggle like it's something. That's why we put the struggle over a middle class life. You didn't get it out the mud.
Yeah.
Your racism, your discrimination, whatever it might be, whether it's true or not, is not my problem. It's not my problem. What happens if I walk in believing that I'm at a disadvantage when I went to that boardroom at 18 years old wearing my Primark t-shirt. Imagine if I walked in believing I was at a disadvantage. Would that have helped me or hindered me? The belief that I was at a disadvantage. So my natural position, and I'm just telling you the truth here, whether it's politically or socially acceptable or not, for me, I've always thought that's your problem. Your discrimination is your problem. I was 18, walking into those rooms with these people that are double my age and did not look like me. And I know that their underestimation of me is one of my greatest advantages, because when I got going, when they heard me speak, when they heard how passionate I was about what I wanted to do, they'd be like, damn, we underestimated this kid. But the broader point there was like, not my problem. I'm well aware discrimination and racism exist. Yes, people will discriminate about those things, but also many other things. My job, and the thing that I can control, is how I show up, making sure I'm my best, being hardworking, dedicated, honing my skills. That's what I can control. Focus on that which you can control, and you'll be just fine. And it's not my job to control someone else's discrimination, their racism, their prejudice of me. That's their bullshit to deal with.
So I grew up in apartheid South Africa as a English-speaking white boy. I only became politically conscious when I was already 18 years of age, because prior to that, I had been subjected to and sucked in this incredible propaganda of victimization of the white people, where every piece of news, every message we were getting, every joke, the butt of every joke was the stupidity of the black man, the inability of the black man to look after himself, never mind the country, to be ignorant, uneducated, break everything he touched. The messaging was that all violence was black violence, that all crime was black crime, that you had to fear black people. And a huge amount of that fear was that if we let them into the political process, into the governance of the country, that they would do to us exactly what we had done to them for decades, which would be to turn around and oppress us, to murder us, to take our stuff, to move into our houses. It was a very popular story that the ANC, prior to the 94 election, when it was still an illegal organization and Nelson Mandela was still in jail, and the armed wing was exiled to Zambia and Mozambique, Umkhonto Wesizwe, was that they promised all of our domestic servants that those servants would be given the house they worked in when the ANC ruled. And these stories were told amongst the whites to bolster our resolve never to let these black people run our country. And it was only when I became conscious of that from 18 onwards that I realized not only was this a terrible lie that was actually oppressing us as well as the people that we as a white nation, white minority, were oppressing, but that actually what happened subsequently from 1994 onwards was far more of a reflection of the nature of black South Africans than any fears we as white South Africans had been fed and believed, right? And I see direct parallels with what's happening in Palestine and Israel. We've been fed this bullshit of Israel as victim, of the Zionist government as defending, this idea that the entire Arab world wanted to wipe them off the map, when in fact, prior to the Nakba, prior to Palestine being given to Israel by the colonial powers, primarily Britain, many Jews lived very happily and harmoniously alongside Muslims and Christians within that region. They weren't oppressed there. They became the oppressor through the Zionist ambition of a few Israelis. White government for many, many years in South Africa needed the violence of Umkhonto Wesizwe. They needed the odd bomb to go off. They needed terror attacks because it justified the further repression. And I've told stories about when I was in the South African Defence Force in 1987-88, 88-89. The things that were done by the intelligence service to undermine the ANC and other liberation struggles, and to pit black against black, to distract black people from action against the oppressive minority and the history of oppression. And it's time to step aside from what we've been told and look at the truth, look at the reality, look at the history, educate ourselves, and make a moral judgment based on our real values as a human.
This South African farmer bullshit. which is the most blatantly obvious racist shit ever. It is blatantly obvious the way that we treat white South Africans, who are, by the way, for the most part, and I am generalizing here, some of the wealthiest people are well-to-do people in the country. They speak their language. They own most of the land and the property. And somehow they're being granted a fast track to become Americans while they're trying to cut down on immigration from other countries. You know, you get that from where? From the brown people. On March 7th, Trump took to Truth Social to announce he is offering white South African farmers, quote, a rapid pathway to U.S. citizenship, pointing out that South Africa's new land reform push signed into law last year, which lets the government take land without compensation if the property is not being used and there's no intention to either develop or make money from it. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you some context here. They're not just taking land away from white South African farmers. White South Africans, about 9% of the population, owned 87% of the fertile land. Okay? Today, black South Africans make up more than 90% of the population, and they only hold about 4% of all privately owned land. So what they're trying to do is say, hey, we need to fix an historical injustice and figure out if you're not using that land to farm, then we need to have some of that land, not taking all of your entire farm. That's not what's happening. And we need to what? There needs to be equity. And now people are crying because the playing field is being leveled. And so therefore it is now discrimination.
I have a warning for white people. This is a warning for white people. If you are white, listen up, listen to this message. You need to hear this and you need to know this, okay? Growing up, my parents are from the South and my family's from the South. And there was one phrase that they used to say to us all the time. And that was, a dog that will bring a bone will carry a bone. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, but basically it means someone who gossips to you will also gossip about you. So if someone's always coming to you with, sharing other people's business, you don't want to trust that person, because if you tell them your business, they're probably going to go tell your business to other people. So you don't tell them anything that you don't want everybody to know, right? I thought about this in the framework of white supremacy culture. White people have a code of silence. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to say it. It's understood. You have a code of silence as it relates to talking about white supremacy, as it relates to talking about anti-black racism and systemic racism. Y'all know if there's one thing you don't do, it's ever talk about being white, talk about whiteness at all, and you don't talk about white people's role or complicity in anti-black racism and systemic racism. It's just understood. Well, here's the warning that I have for you today. White people who believe, embrace, support, and perpetuate negative racial stereotypes about black people, who have anti-black racism as a part of their belief system, and therefore that informs and influences how they interact with black people, how they talk about black people, how they feel about black people, how they vote as it relates to black people. Okay? These are not people that you're safe with. These are not people that you can trust. Okay? Watch how they talk about us. Watch how they talk about us. What do they say about us? Watch how they behave around us. Okay? Watch how they react and respond to us. Particularly when we are talking about racism. Particularly when we appear to be doing well and doing better than they are. Particularly when we are in a position of power or influence or leadership. Watch how they talk about us. And just know, the same way that they talk about us is how they'll talk about you too. The same way that they cause harm to us, they'll cause harm to you too. You are not safe with them. So your code of silence needs to be broken, because it's really not protecting you. It's really not, because the moment you step out of that, the moment you do something that they don't like, they don't agree with, or you look like you're trying to be an ally to us, or look out for us, or help us, or be friends with us, you'll find out just how safe you aren't. Okay? So break that code of silence. It's not protecting you. The same way that they treat us, they'll treat you the same way. Trust me, all it takes is one little thing, and you'll see them flip that script. So beware. Beware. That code of silence with white people as a part of white supremacy culture does not protect you from anything. It's harmful to us and it's harmful to you. Now, the reality is some of these people are your family members. right? Some of these people are your parents, they're your grandparents, they're your uncles, they're your cousins. Some of them may be close friends of yours, right? Some of them are your neighbors. So what do? Maybe you can't just be cutting people off, right? This is your community. You live in a predominantly white community. Your family members are white. What are you supposed to do? Well, I'm gonna help you out with that, okay? Learn how to have these conversations about racism with your racist white family members, okay? In my 5-day challenge, in my webinar replay, or in my digital handbook. The reason I created these resources for you, specifically teaching you how to have conversations about racism, is because I know that you are going to have to engage in conversations with people who are committed to racism, who don't want to talk about it, who don't want to change, who want to continue to cause harm and be racist in peace, right? But you still have to live with them. You still have to work with them. You still have to talk to them. So what do? You learn how to do it, and you learn how to do it effectively so that you are not causing the same type of harm that they're causing, so that you are not remaining silent and maintaining this white supremacist code of silence. You get the education and the training that you should have been getting your whole entire life, so that you know how to enter these conversations and actually make an impact, make a positive impact, and make things safer, not just for us, but for you too. So if you want to get that training and you want to learn how to do this with compassion, with confidence, and without causing unintentional harm, go to that link in my bio and sign up for my Anti-Racist Conversations Confidence Challenge today. I'm here to help. This is how I'm helping you out. You can get it, you cannot get it, it's up to you. Just know that it's available to you if you want it.
I never believe people when they say that they can't possibly be racist because they have black family members, because they will always choose the comfort of their whiteness over having empathy for non-white people. Whenever they have black family members or non-white family members in general, and those people call out any type of hurtful behavior, they are immediately isolated, ostracized, villainized, you name it. And they will almost always choose their whiteness over you and quickly remind you that they've only tolerated you all these years. They will never choose you because you are not really one of them.
White South Africans will hate America.
Americans don't even like you. They just want your numbers. Welcome to today's Go Back to Africa episode of
Africans, aliens, and animals. We'll sing a rapper, Sonic Grace. Follow for knowledge, follow for music.
So the orange one and the awkward one have decided to bus a whole bunch of white South Africans into the United States while deporting black and brown people out of America. Apparently being a white South African is just so hard with all that racism against the white people, and every time they try to go to other white countries like Australia and England, those countries are like, no. But America is like, oh my god, you're a white racist person who already has a history of hating black people. Here is your green card. These white South Africans are in for a surprise because, like I said, Americans don't actually want them here. And I'm not even talking about, the sensible Americans that think this is absolutely insane and discriminatory and inhumane. But I'm talking about even the Republicans, the red states, the MAGA. They don't actually want them here. They just need to bolster their population because according to them, the white population is, under the threat of extinction. So they're getting as many white refugees that they can, which I digress a little bit. Back in the 70s, when the birth rates of white people started falling and immigrants from Europe stopped coming to America with good reason. So now they've gone all the way out to South Africa to find white people that want to be here. The reason why I said white South Africans are not going to have fun in America is because in South Africa, white South Africans are the numeric minority, okay? South Africa has 63 million people. White people are only 4.4 million. That is 7.3%. Meanwhile, in America, the population is 336 million. The white population is 225 million. So these white South Africans are only used to competing with 4.4 million people. In America, they're going to be competing against 225 million, half of which don't even want them there, and the other half are only tolerating them. And in South Africa, where the minority white population owned 70% of the land, majority of the political power, and, international influence, they're not gonna have that in America. They're refugees. They're starting from scratch. No land, no jobs. Yeah, they speak English, but it's a little different. And I know you're thinking, well, they're white people will accept them. No. Remember the Italians, the Irish? Yeah, it's not gonna go as well as they hope. They're not gonna have their maids, their farm workers. They will be the farm workers, because remember, they're going into red states. They will be part of the poor white population. And if you know anything about the poor white population in America, is that America also doesn't like them. I mean, look at how Trump is using or rather use them for votes, and now he's cutting off all their benefits. Egg prices are through the roof. So if you think, if you're a white South African and you think it's gonna be good here, no, it won't. You're gonna be very poor. Which is kind of what you wanted anyway. They've been saying in South Africa ever since the end of apartheid, how they're poor and they're not doing well. Well, now, guess what? You get to stand on business, because you're really gonna be poor in America. I guess you forgot to Google capitalism and realize that capitalism needs poor white people in order to survive. So I'm pretty sure these rich ass capitalists are pretty thankful for all of the labor that you're bringing. As another content creator at Shenanigans and Info already pointed out, that these white South Africans, some of them apparently already here, in places like Nebraska, which is a red state, also has a lot of farms. That land will not be yours. Unlike in South Africa, where you were just able to take it from black people, these white people are not just gonna give you land. Even if you're white, they will look you in the face and tell you to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. And also, in South Africa, a lot of, white South Africans, even though apartheid is over, you were still able to segregate yourself into, Orania. But in America, because you're coming in as a poor white person, segregation is gonna be a little hard to do. Meaning, you will be living next door to black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, trans people, and some of those groups will be doing way better than you. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. If you want to know how these white South Africans were the Christopher Columbus of South Africa, tell me in the comments and I will make a video. Anyway, thank you. Bye.
Can you believe you are a biblical man of God and still be racist? Yes, you certainly can. And I'm going to show you how. This man right here says he is a Hebrew Israelite. And watch what he says in this clip.
What if the white man says, I repent in the name of Jesus? Will he be accepted? Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau. Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. For ye know how that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place of repentance. There's no repentance for Esau. Though he sought it carefully prepared. Although he cried, God said, no, I don't accept you. You've all been deceived in your churches. You've never read the Bible, but now we can read. You've been listening to the lying white man with this, and the white man has lied to you, lied to you, lied to you, lied to you about everything. These so-called white people are your enemies. They've lied to us for centuries. Every last one of us, they've lied to. The devil, the Bible speaks of.
So he's saying no one that's white can be saved, and he's trying to use the Bible to justify it. Well, yes, we can read, and we do read now. Before I even quote this verse that I'm going to quote, I want you to recognize how he used Esau. However, if we're talking about skin complexion, remember that Esau was Jacob's twin. Same mother, same father. Now, different lineages may have come from them, but both of their dad was Isaac, and both of their grandfather was Abraham. So even the descendants of Esau come from Abraham. which is why this next verse I'm about to quote is super important. Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So no matter if you're black, white, yellow, or brown, you can step into salvation, is what that's saying. Because the fact of the matter is, we are the spiritual Israel. We are spiritual Jews inwardly, as Romans 2:29 says. Stop believing these bastards who are doing the devil's work. They're racist, and they're doing the devil's work in the name of God. Because there's a lot of blood on their hands if people turn away from the faith because of the nonsense that they're spewing out. And if you agree with this trash, may you repent before your time is done on this earth.
So the Afrikaners, they finally got what they wanted. You could see the smiles on their face. They're so happy to be in America. And this whole thing, it was so controversial. Many black South Africans, they were saying that these Afrikaners, they were living in privilege. But these people, they're saying that they are being brutally attacked, especially on their farms. And now, even Trump is saying that these attacks are happening. Look.
The genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa, and the newspapers and the media, television media doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they talk about it. That would be the only story they talk about.
What do you guys think about this? Trump, he signed that executive order back in February, but now we're finally seeing the first wave of Afrikaners arriving in the U.S. I personally think Elon Musk, he asked Trump for a favor. That's why this is all happening. But what do you think? Comment below.
Dear black people, could you stop making videos that say, "Dear white people, if you don't have a problem with people that look like me, would you be my friend?" Racism died with Gen X. As a widespread issue, that was boomers. It died with Gen X. Most of us are grandparents now, and apparently you didn't even notice. Like, we put in the work. We stopped judging people by the color of their skin, and you didn't even notice. But now we feel your judgment all the time, and we're tired of walking on eggshells. Because we know there's a very good chance that you probably have a problem with our skin color. And because you assume that we're racist while you're being racist. It died down so much that now youth, a lot of white youth, uses the N-bomb. I can't imagine doing that. I can't. It hurts me. But they use it casually. It's not because they're racist. Nope. It's because it's a huge part of pop culture, and it has been for 30 years, over 30 years, since hip-hop went mainstream, since gangster rap went mainstream, and the word was everywhere. And kids today are baffled by racism. They think it's so stupid that it's laughable. Yet there's a word that is ubiquitous in pop culture that a large percentage of the population just isn't permitted to use. They don't understand that. They think it's ridiculous, so they rebel against it. As kids do when they don't understand something and they see it as ridiculous and dumb. You can feel how you feel about that. I feel how I feel about it. I don't like it at all. I taught my kids to never say that word because it was a word that was created for hate. But the word has changed, I guess. I can't change the way I view it, but for them it's changed. Dear black people, oh, I love you. I love your culture. I love your swagger. I love your hair. I love how you can speak with roundness while I speak in squares and triangles. But I also love my culture, and I love my hair, And I love my skin, and I love your skin, and I love our differences and our commonalities. And it's time to heal. If you don't focus on healing how you view white people, and then how you view yourselves in relation to white people, because the superiority complex only ever masks an inferiority complex, then we're going to be doing a civil rights movement for white people in like 20, 30 years. And I know some of you would like that. But that just says that you're the racist now, because white people aren't the racists anymore. And I'm not saying there isn't a single white person who's racist. There's assholes in every group and every color. But the majority of us left that with our parents or grandparents. It doesn't even make sense to us. And we don't need to feel guilty about what our ancestors did, because we're the ones that fixed it. It's over now. Unless you want to perpetuate it.
While this racist-ass administration terrorizes Latinos across America, some who have been here all their life, have done the right thing, go to their appointments, to do the right things, and then be arrested at their appointments. And then some who just go to work and live their daily lives day by day, graduate from high school, go to college, not committing criminal acts, working jobs and paying taxes like everybody else. But this administration, they're racist ass thugs, go and kidnap these people, terrorize their kids, make their kids cry, and then we're going to welcome open arms these people right here. If this ain't all out racism, I don't know what is. Sickening, man. Sickening. And I shouldn't hold no ill will toward these people, because it's not their fault. And I really wouldn't have no problem with them coming here if the other side was treated the same way. But this is about what it is. Make America white. And treat Latinos who have worked in this country and paid taxes like shit. But you Latinos for Trump, you're all the biggest fucking embarrassments to your old damn selves. Look at your fucking self in the mirror. Ain't nothing white about you, pendejo. Fuck Donald Trump and fuck his racist ass supporters.
The Trump administration has officially granted more than 50 white South Africans refugee status in the U.S. Kate Bartlett reports from Johannesburg. The Afrikaners are expected to land in the U.S. next week.
The group of white South Africans could arrive at Dulles Airport as early as Monday, 3 sources with knowledge of the matter told NPR, which has also seen an email confirming the arrangements. The sources all work for the U.S. government, so did not want to be named out of fear of retribution. This comes just 3 months after President Trump signed an executive order claiming Afrikaners face persecution in South Africa and could apply for refugee status in the United States. Afrikaners are the descendants of mainly Dutch colonists. The South African government says there is no evidence they are being persecuted and has accused the U.S. administration of being taken in by disinformation. For NPR News, I'm Kate Bartlett in Johannesburg.
England was made on the backs of foreigners.
Let's even go back to
was made on the backs of foreigners, particularly black people. And I find it so interesting that we are only British when we're needed. We're British when we're winning for them. We're British when we're creative for them. We're British when they're prophetizing off us. But then when we're losing, or when we stand up for ourselves, all of a sudden we're not British anymore, we're African. I don't fuck with that. I don't